You know when Taylor Swift said we can leave the Christmas lights up till January? I took that as a challenge. I think I'm gonna go for February. I think that'd be so fun. Hey, welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be sharing a reading challenge that I'm going to try and do this year in 2025. I would like to complete the Storygraph Read the World Challenge for 2025. So if you've never heard of this challenge, the goal is to read 10 different books from 10 different countries around the world so that you can get a different perspective on your reading. A lot of us, including myself, get stuck reading books from the same few countries. For me, it's England, the US, and some a little bit of Canada. So I'd like to diversify this year, and I'm hoping that this challenge can be a great way to do that. The reason I'm making this video is one, accountability, obviously, but two, I also wanted to see if anybody had any recommendations for me. I've selected these books, but if there's one from a country that you think would work better, let me know in the comments. I am flexible. Some of these books I just Googled, so I'm open to suggestions. We're going to start off with Australia, and for Australia, I have selected Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko. When I was picking my book for Australia, I knew going in that I wanted to read a book from an Indigenous author in Australia. I know that there is a similar history of colonization within the Indigenous communities in both Australia and Canada. I've done some reading on Canada, but I have a huge blank space when it comes to Australia. So I'm hoping that this book can kind of fill in the dots. This book is about a woman who is heading back to her family and the town that she grew up in, and reconnecting with her family. So it's a lot about land, indigeneity, community. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I've read some kind of similar books with themes like that set in Canada. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those two books compare. And yeah, just getting to know a little bit more about the Australian Indigenous communities because I know nothing and I want that to change. The second book on my list is from Belgium, and that is Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. I listened to Armchair Expert for a while, and they loved her. Like, they always had her on. She had her own show. It was a whole thing. So I've never read anything by her, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to do that. So this book is about kind of long-term monogamous relationships, and that is a fit for me. I've been dating Joe for 7 years, so fits for me. Esther Perel is like the foremost person in the sexual health, sexual relationship sphere who's writing. So I don't know, just seemed like a good idea. I don't know, just gonna read the book. It's probably gonna make me a little like a little shy, but I'll read it. This book was kind of touted as the essential bedside table book of monogamists, so we'll see. I'm scared it's gonna make me go and I'm gonna be so shy. So if I never tell you about how I feel about this book, maybe it's because I'm just shy. Our third country is China, and the book I selected for China is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I just talked about R.F. Kuang in my last book, how I was looking forward to Catabasis, and that I wanted to read The Poppy War. Well, guess what? I actually have a reason and a challenge that I need to read it for. So this is kind of one of the gimme books that I put in here. A lot of these are like literary fiction, mind-challenging books, but I wanted to put books in there that I knew that I would like. So this is a fantasy war series set in the 20th century in China. It's like based on the history of China, but there's magic, so obviously not real. But I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard nothing but good things about this trilogy. I've been wanting to read it. I'm looking forward to reading it. I've been on a huge fantasy kick, so I think this one might be further up the list. I also have it on hold, so hopefully that's coming soon. But yeah, I am looking forward to this book a lot. I've enjoyed every other R.F. Kuang book I've read. I'm looking forward to Catabasis. Yeah, it's just going to be good. So the next book and next country is Egypt, and the book I selected for that is If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. I actually realized in researching for this video, Noor actually was born in the States and then grew up in Canada and teaches at U of T. So it's kind of like a Canadian Egyptian book with a little bit of American put in there as well. So it's not as Egyptian as I first thought, but it is actually a story about a woman who is going to Egypt with her family. She grew up in America and she's kind of exploring the relationship of like, is this her home? And is she actually going back to her home if she's grown up in a different country? It's also about a toxic relationship. So that'll, I think, keep it interesting. This book first kind of joined my radar. Jack Edwards gave it a really good review like a few years ago, I think, like a 5-star. So I'm going to try it out. It's a book that Storygraph describes for those who like complex explorations of identity, class, the intricacies of toxic relationships, particularly those who appreciate literary fictions that challenge societal norms and expectations. So that sounds interesting. I'm excited for that. It's a book that was already on my radar, so I was excited when I saw that it fit within the parameters of this challenge. To be honest, I don't know what the rules of the challenge are. Like, does the author have to be born in that country? Does the book have to be set in the country? You'll see that I kind of don't have rules, right? I just go from the list. So, yeah. I love challenges. The book that I selected for Kenya is A Grain of Wheat by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I wrote that down in my own pronunciation speak, so I'm hoping that I said it right. This author was listed as the most prominent author in East Africa when I Googled Kenyan authors, so I picked his most prominent book, and that is A Grain of Wheat. It is a story about rebellion, independence, and set in kind of a almost post-colonial Kenya. So it's right before Kenya gets its independence from England. It's about right after the Mau Mau Rebellion, on the cusp of independence from Britain, a story about the cost of freedom. I thought it would just be a good place to start. He's the most famous author from Kenya. It's his most famous book. I just figured it made the most sense. This is one that I'm not super confident in. I don't really know much about it. I read the description, but I'm looking forward to it. I don't think I've read a book from an African author in a really long time, like set in Africa. So I'm looking forward to reading it and getting to know a little bit more about the history of Kenya. So the book I'm reading for Malaysia is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lin Tan. And I am reading this book because my best friend Nicole, she recommended it to me a few years ago and she gave it 5 stars. I think she said to me one time it was the best book she's ever read. So very high bar because she is not an easy writer and I'm looking forward to this. Despite this being my Malaysian pick, so the author is from Malaysia, the story is actually about Chinese mythology. So again, the rules, we don't know what the rules are. What are the rules? We don't know. But I'm really, really looking forward to reading this. It's one that I've always wanted to read because of Nick's recommendation. And I do love a myth retelling. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be one of those books where I can kind of slot it in when I'm feeling a bit sluggish from all of these really long reads. For Iceland, I selected Independent People by Halldór Laxness. This is an old book. It was published in 1934 as 2 different volumes and actually won the Nobel Prize in 1955. So she's an oldie, but when I Googled Icelandic books, this was the first one that popped up. Probably because of the Nobel Prize, is my guess. It seems like the setting is a huge part of this book, so I'm looking forward to that. That's something that usually draws me to a book. It seems very contemplative and slow. It's about kind of independence and family connections and very heavy on the setting from what I can understand. So I'm looking forward to this book, but I am a little scared because it seems like at points it could be dry. I'm going to give myself a lot of time to read this book. Nevertheless, I am looking forward to it and it'll be an experience. I think I'll read it in the wintertime and really get into like that, that slog vibe. So the next book is one that I actually have. It is Mexican Gothic, and I selected it for Mexico, and it is by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is a book that I've had recommended to me for a while now. It is a Gothic horror book. I bought it last fall intending to read it, and I did not read it. So I was so happy when it fit into a prompt here. It is set in 1950s Mexico City about kind of like a star, and she's in a spooky house. And from what I understand, there's mushrooms involved, which is cool. People at work said it was really good. Looking forward to reading it. Love that I already have it and I don't have to go to the library. But yeah, this is like a spooky book. So I think I'm going to read this probably like September, October time to get into the spooky spirit. But it's nice to know that I already have a fall TBR member. Welcome to the club, queen. So for the Netherlands, I selected The Safe Keep by Jal van der Wooden. I'm doing my best. I also wrote this in my own little pronunciation. This is, from what I got it, like a kind of like a literary thriller set in the Dutch countryside in, I think, 1961, post World War II. It's about this woman who's living in her late mother's home, and then her life is turned topsy-turvy when her brother brings home his girlfriend, who is kind of like the complete opposite of her. Like, our main character is very regimented and like quiet, and this girlfriend is a crazy girl. So she is kind of, her life is thrown for a loop. She kind of becomes obsessed with this girl. It's a story explained as complex, atmospheric storytelling with historical depth and nuanced exploration of obsession, desire, and identity. Particularly those interested in LGBTQIA themes and historical fiction will enjoy this book. So I just really liked the idea of the atmospheric part of this book. Love an atmospheric read. So yeah, looking forward to this. And the last country on the list is the Philippines. And for that, I selected Some People Need Killing, A Memoir of Murder in the Philippines by Patricia Evangelista. I picked this book up because it sounded a little similar to Murders of Osage County, which I read last year and enjoyed. Kind of like a nonfiction memoir, true crime book set over a long period of time. So the conceit of this book is that it is set during the murders that happened around the drug war started by Duterte. So it's kind of a history. And it's, interestingly enough, it said the grammatical world of murder. So I'm like, what does that mean? I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, it just seems like it'll be really interesting. I don't know anything about the drug war in the Philippines, so this will kind of give me a crash course from what I understand. This book is listed as perfect for readers who are passionate about investigative journalism, human rights, social justice, and looking for deeply personal, unflinching explorations of the complexities of violence, power, and resistance in the Philippines. So, yeah, it seems like it's got it all. So, yeah, those are the 10 books that I'm planning on reading from 10 different countries across the world this year. It is a challenge on Storygraph. I can link it in my description if you want to join in. The countries are all the same, but everybody gets to select their own books. So I think it's really cool. I'm looking forward to diversifying my reads this year. As I've stated, I just want to read good books this year. So I'm hoping that being a little bit more intentional with challenges like this will make it so that I can find some more awesome books and learn about the world more instead of just reading the same books over and over again. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you did, liking the video, all that fun stuff. Stay tuned for my next video, which will probably be about books. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye.